I'm one of the first ones to do it because one of the MSOs went to the CCC and was like, this guy's trying to do collusion. So I got pulled in front of the CCC and they're like, what's this about you violating like the 3 permit rule, like all this collusion? And it's been really, really hard for a couple of reasons.
Hold on to your bladders. It's a long, loaded listen with plenty of hot takes. This dispensary owner tried to unite retailers, faced CCC collusion questions, and his early warnings to brands are starting to come true. I'm Jason Raposa. After 25 years in tech and cannabis, I host High Functioning to show what actually works. Today's guest is Mike Hunnewell, owner of Eskar dispensaries, and before cannabis, he worked at a major grocery GPO and helped a defense startup scale from single orders to hundreds of thousands of units. We get into what a GPO really is, how license caps and consolidation play out in this market, and when private label and MAP help instead of hurt.
But at the end of the day, and think about me. I have 2 stores. How many stores in the market are profitable at this point? That will ultimately just, and the market's not changing right now. What I would say, it's starting to stabilize in a lot of ways. So when you change the law, you're basically going to just flip the chessboard over.
This is real strategy over hype. So let's dive in. Chew, wait, hope. Hard pass. Pocket uses micro and nano emulsification, so effects show up in about a quarter hour. It's the gummy experience without the gummy lag. Pocket your chill and keep moving.
I'm Mike Hunnewell. I own Eskar. We're just like a smaller dispensary. We actually have 2 dispensaries. But a little bit about me, I have kind of a journeyman background. Obviously, I would argue anyone who's gotten into cannabis has a kind of a journeyman background, right? Given how young the industry is. But the 2 most, I would say, interesting things about my background is I worked in CPG for a few years right out of college. Actually, one of the largest grocery GPOs in the world. So fun fact, people don't realize anyone who is at Walmart actually is part of this kind of big cooperative that purchases all their supplies together. I want to say it's a couple $100 billion is what their spend is in the US. And they do 2 things. Obviously, they help people get cheap supplies, and then they create their own private labels. So I did that for a few years. Pretty eye-opening to learn about how liquor and grocery works. We've tried to apply it to our stores a little bit. And then I worked in a defense startup after that for about a decade, which was a really eye-opening in seeing how regulated markets kind of take off and how it affects us. And I think cannabis, I try to explain to people, I draw a ton of parallels between what the defense industry looks like as far as regulations, lobbying, all that stuff, and how it applies to cannabis, which is a really weird thing to see. And we went from scaling in manufacturing, from 1 item to 1 unit per order to a couple 100,000 units per order. And how did we learn to do that? And I think there's a lot of people in cannabis learning that too.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot to unpack there, because when I think about GPO, which we're going to get to, even what that means, because I think a lot of people in the industry don't understand what that means.
Right.
I don't really either. I will say I'll pretend I do sometimes. I'll be like, oh yeah, all this other stuff. But before we define that, I didn't realize you worked for was a third party defense.
Yeah, we're a subcontract. And we can talk about that because I think it's very telling where this industry will probably go.
Right.
So when I got into the industry, there used to be in the late 80s, early 90s, 200, 300 major defense contractors. By the time I got there, there was 5 and then 3, and they really want to go to 2 now. And you can imagine, you've heard of the Boeing.
Yeah.
That's led to just a myriad of issues.
Right.
And the government hates the situation they're in, but they allowed it. And I think it's done some good things, but like everything else, you had to, what's always sold in the beginning no one talks about the downside
Right.
when you're certainly legislation.
But I feel like, just like in cannabis, though, you put the rules and guidelines in place, and you don't kind of see what 10 years from now looks like.
Right.
You don't know what's going to happen, how there might be specific, whether you call them loopholes or whatever, certain ways you can manipulate it in a way that favors like a specific type of organization to be built or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, no one saw like vertical integration, right? Like they thought so in defense, we used to call these, and VCs too, we did a lot of VC work. We used to call them capital barriers. And then there was things called capital blitz, but you basically, if you're a big guy in a heavily regulated market,
You've got it.
You want testing. You want, oh my God, you want high-end security. You want
all the regulations.
You want all the regulations.
Because you already did it.
Because you already did it all. And
You want that barrier to be high.
you want that barrier to be high because that doesn't allow kind of these small, nimble, little guys to like wiggle their way into the industry.
That's why in order to do it, you have to be literally a billionaire. You
Yeah.
have to be an Elon Musk type or...
So you kind of look at like Enduro, right? Like they are the last firm to really come along and threaten the defense. And like, there's still like some of the older guys in the industry that laugh at those guys, but they basically needed billions and billions to overcome the market. And even for us, it kind of shows you, when I was there, we had someone like Raytheon with like 10,000 subcontractors, or it was more than that. I want to say it was like 20,000. They're trying to get down to 10,000. But they didn't care because they were sitting at the top. You were never going to get over them. Yeah. Like, where were you going to go test the missile? Where were you going to go do radar analysis? Like, we couldn't do that. We didn't have like $200 million to make a small missile sitting in the back of the car. And the government already given that. So in cannabis, right? Like you've seen these big barriers, and it also means you kind of need these really high volumes to support this big network of sunk capital.
Right. And I think that's what differentiates you specifically versus any other operator I've spoke to, because I think you inherently get a lot of these things and you can kind of have that crystal ball in a sense of like where this is all.
Yeah, I understand where it came from. Like I understand why they imposed the vertical integration. Like why did that why do you have to be vertically integrated? Right. Like sure, there's the tax implications, but who the heck is going to put up a 100,000 square foot grow to like find out if you want to break into the industry?
Right. As an experiment.
As an experiment, right?
It's a square foot grow.
And what they didn't see coming, I would argue, is a lot of people actually went ahead and did it anyways. Yeah. And now what you thought was what was kind of originally designed to be like only like a few players, you kind of have these very nimble groups coming in. And, we saw it in like CPG too, with like the farming and ag, and why like the grocery stores never got invested in the farming and ag, that now can all of a sudden, with excess supply in the market and things like that, you're now all of a sudden able to basically be on have parity in pricing against someone who has this full vertical integration. Right.
Now Walmart or something like that.
Yeah, like Walmart. Like Walmart doesn't, what I tell people is, you don't think if Walmart wanted to, they could have bought the strawberry fields that they get their strawberries from. Like why is Rubbermaid? Like why is that? Like why doesn't Raytheon, like why do they have 20,000 subcontractors? Ooh. They want to get down to 10,000, but why 10,000? Right. So, now what you're seeing is, they wrote the legislation and they thought they kind of had built this moat. And again, like I should, for the record, I don't necessarily have like, I understand why they do it. I just look at like, do I care? Like if business is evil or good or whatever, I'm just explaining why they did it.
Yeah. And then exactly, if you put it through that context, and we're trying to figure out a way to survive in this market, this industry. Yeah, it kind of gives you that context to be able to say like, okay, as the incentives align a specific way to do specific acts, whether going vertical or just big MSOs coming in or whatever, you kind of have a game plan. Yeah. So, but like we're going back to your like grocery store days or CPG days. Yeah. I want to get back to this term really quickly. GPO. Okay. What is that?
So group purchasing organization.
Is that a legal like entity you create?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's something like you'll hear all sorts of names, co-ops. GPO is kind of infamous because of insurance GPOs, but I can't think of a market that in retail that is mature, that doesn't have some type of group purchasing organization, like whatever you want to call it.
It's group purchasing.
It's group purchase. It's basically someone said, like, what if we took a franchise model, right? We use that scale and let other people kind of run the businesses. But where group purchasing kind of like deviates from that is, in my opinion, is you're sharing the wealth a little bit more. And it's important to understand that, because if you don't share the wealth, right, you're aggregating kind of these huge giants, and they don't, a lot of the times, like ego's a real thing, and like personality is a real thing. And, like it's important to keep your name on a business, or like,
well, of course, but like on the GPO side, we're talking about bulk purchasing to be able to get preferential pricing for
right.
sale, right?
So there's two major components to like these GPOs, at least in like a retail setting. One of them is obviously negotiating brand names, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of business is just aggregating and using your purchasing power to leverage on one side versus the other. So think of like a little guy trying to deal with Coca-Cola,
Right.
or like PepsiCo. They're like, oh, we want better pricing. What do you think Coca-Cola is going to tell them?
Go pound.
Like, go pounce it.
Basically.
And like, I can tell some stories, like there's some wild stories that I picked up from at the GPO days, where like, there's a lot of similarities now, where if anything, the manufacturers would leverage themselves and split these competing resellers up against each other. Like, so
what do you mean, like getting a bid? Like, as an example, would somebody say like, all right, your unit costs, we're going to spend $1.50 a unit, and then another company says, or no, we're willing to sell it to you $1.50, and they want to get a better price. They're like, how about $1.40?
Yeah.
And they're like, wait a second, but this other group's going to buy from you $1.45.
And what are you going to do about it? Like the guy down the roads. And I've had vendors tell me this. Like I won't say who, but I was talking to the VP of sales for a national gummy company, and they clearly hadn't come from CPG, because the way they said it, like, what are you going to do about it? They're like,
they actually dropped that line on.
Yeah, they're like, what are you going to do? They said, we're going to go to the guy down the street and we're going to wholesale out our edibles for $5. And if the industry's at 50% margin, they're going to sell for 10. They're going to sell for 10. And what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Like, you have to get on board. That's their entire national strategy. Now, like, besides the threats aside, there's a ton of reasons why that is a terrible strategy for a brand on a national level.
Right.
It's to the point that, like, they weren't considering things like brand spiral, like alternatives. At the end of the day, I don't think a lot of the national brands, the kind of the story that I hear, or what we saw, is these big brands came into this market and they're just like, we're from X state, right? You're Colorado, California. Right. You need us.
Yeah.
Which is wild, because you look at CPG, at the end of the day in retail, like, brands, their job is to figure out a way to make resellers, my opinion, I take, is to make resellers money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do that, like, the resellers aren't just going to roll over and expose, and just like be like, oh, all right, we got to bring you in.
Right.
They're going to figure out another way. Right. And there is a long history of that, like Nike, right? One of the biggest brand in the world, right? Yeah. They said, was it like in 2010, they were going to try to have 50% of their products online. They didn't want to deal with Foot Locker, Dick's Sporting Goods, all those guys. And they basically, it was like a 10-year plan, right? And I think they hit 50% within like 5 years or 3. So they like knocked out. If you go read a lot of the articles now, it's like the worst decision in company history. It's killed their brand.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in what way? So,
because
the only place before was Foot Locker.
Reseller markets, right? And they basically said, think about it. You're a kid going into a store, right? You're going into Dick's Sporting Goods, and Dick's has 700 different shoes. And they're like, this shoe is the best shoe we have here. Like, why wouldn't you believe them? Now you go on Nike's website and they go, we're Nike. We're the best shoe. Why would they? They're not going to believe you. It's disingenuous. And so like little things like
coming from a third party.
Coming from a third party.
It's like impartial to like whatever one they sell. I mean, they're not fully, obviously, because there's different, they incentivized to sell Adidas that day.
Sure, right. But there's like, like there's rebate programs, all that stuff. And you kind of look at, right, like a lot of people point to like, oh, look to the direct to consumer market on like Instagram. And a lot of that now is they have done well, but like a lot of that now is they were the first to advertise on social media, and a lot of that market's become real saturated.
Yeah.
And they've really struggled. A lot of those that were killing it in the beginning.
I do want to get to that real quick.
Yeah.
Like, is there a GPO in cannabis, in Massachusetts cannabis?
So
Was there?
I've tried. So like I probably was the first. I'm probably the first one, if not in the country, to try to do a GPO.
Yeah.
And now so I tried to start this like 3 years ago, and it's been really, really hard for a couple of reasons. And I know I'm one of the first ones to do it because one of the MSOs went to the CCC and was like, this guy's trying to do collusion. And so I got pulled in front of the CCC and they're like, what's this about you violating like the 3 permit rule, like all this collusion? You got to remember a lot of the CCC members came from alcohol. So they're scared of like the 3-tier system where like the distributors have basically locked independent liquor brands out of the market.
Yeah.
And so again, like what GPOs really do differently is you are aggregating buying power and then ultimately sharing instead of just having a single entity benefit.
Yeah.
You're kind of like Roger Goodell and the owners. Like the owners at the end of the day run the show as much as like he's like there.
Right.
So he answers to those people. A GPO is basically the same because if you think about it, right, if you have someone really big with say you have someone in this market with like 3 stores, and you were like, hey, we want to start this GPO. You could help a lot of these little guys out. What do you think the big guy's going to say? What's in it for me?
Yeah.
Why would I do this?
Care.
So you need some mechanism to reward those people spending. And then you also need, it's not just like one guy. You need to somehow figure out a mechanism to make basically everyone happy, from your largest to the littlest. The little guys are easy because they're just thrilled.
They're happy to be there.
They're happy to be there, right? They're getting pricing they never could.
Right.
They see these big entities encroaching on them, right?
Right.
And there's just no out for them.
Right.
And so someone comes along and they're like, we're going to offer you 50% off, 80% off on your COGS.
Right.
That's like a home run for them.
Right.
The question is for the big guy that's getting already like 60, 70% off, right? Why would I care?
Right.
I'm already the biggest player.
So you got and it's people tattling on you to the CCC. You get in front of the CCC and they say, what are you doing here? What was the resolution? We're just like, well, there's nothing wrong.
They're like, just whatever you do, I still don't understand it at this point, but they're like, whatever you do, just don't physically hold product, because they saw that as some mechanism of like ownership.
I feel like you, because you had presented this to me even like years ago, which is why I remember it so well. And I was thinking to myself, like, I would think that'd be a benefit to a brand too, because now I have exposure to all these stores we didn't have exposure to as well.
So like what's interesting, and what's interesting for the brands is like, you would probably prefer this to happen as opposed to one big guy, because like something's going to happen in the market, and whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the market's going to consolidate. Someone's going to figure out a kink in the armor and they're going to consolidate the market. Just like Walmart, figured out grocery in the early 90s, and all of a sudden there was a real possibility that Walmart was going to put every grocery store in America out of business.
Right.
And, the GPO and grocery, like that, it had been around for a long time, but it basically blew up in membership the day Walmart showed up, because everyone who thought they were like the big dog all of a sudden was looking at this guy who was putting out chains with like, putting stores with 100 stores, 200 stores. not having enough leverage in the market.
Yeah.
So that's what like basically. Actually, hang on, I lost my train of thought in the question. I'm sorry.
No worries. It's because it's more of like, I thought it was a good idea as a brand.
Yeah.
I was like, let me feed your site to like participate in this. If there's 6 or 8 stores that all want to buy my product at the same time, I'll give them a better price.
So guess where this goes if you just let one person consolidate, right? Here's a fun thing. When I first got out of college, private label was 20% of the market. Now you go in and you look at private label and grocery, it's like 40-50%. So what do you think that means for like an independent brand?
Right.
You are off shelf.
Right.
The second one large player, they're just going to say, especially the vertical guys, right? Like, why would they pay if they have a captive market, captive scaling? Why would you be part of that picture? It's why like the big guys charge to be on shelf.
Right.
It's why
slotting
fees. And there's reasons for that. But like at the end of the day, it shows you that they are ultimately, it's a margin thing. And if you don't drive margins, like you are just not,
they're not going to get the
you could have the best story in the world. They could just care less.
High Functioning isn't your average cannabis podcast. It's where business, wellness, and culture collide with honest convos from people actually doing the work. Tap in at High Functioning Show and hit subscribe so you don't miss a drop. Now, back to the episode. Great. So that leads us to, because you brought up, there's a few things I want to cover here. So private label, we're going to cover.
Yep.
Because I do want to get into that. But just to finish the GPO side, so where does it stand today? It's kind of like, is it still a concept you're trying to pursue?
I want to pursue it. Looking at for some of we've talked to some VCs that are interested. We've talked to some other people that are interested. The big problem is, and I asked around is, anytime we need a couple of, so let me just get one thing clear. There are people doing quasi GPOs right now
in Massachusetts.
And some of it isn't as above board as like what I'm trying to do, right? And I'm sure you know who. Like they're either doing it through friends, but right, like.
Well, we could get, because I do want to talk about.
And we'll talk about it later.
So the buying power, there is definitely one person that comes to mind that represents a bunch of stores.
Right.
And they'll do one purchase, even though there's no even though they don't own all the stores.
Right. And you go talk to like the manager at that store and they're like, I'm just here to keep the lights on, man. I'm not allowed to have a say.
Right. Basically, I'm here to be here.
And I'm like, aren't you an owner? And then
I'm the parent for all the children in the budtenders.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's in a lot of ways, that is a GPO franchise model, right? I mean, the truth is what we've seen, and I can tell you through data that has been given to me, you get up to 3 good stores, 4 good stores, you are getting half off on all your costs easily.
Yeah.
So these little guys they're not going to, whether they come in these small groups of 4 or 5 working together, or you see some of these bigger organizations where it's 20, 30 stores, you need, it's going to happen. And but really the important question is when, and what does that look like? So yeah, I still want to do it. I just think what we've kind of run into a couple of times is people look at me, and this was the same thing with Taco where I worked at, struggled in the beginning, is you need a large player who's willing to play nice on behalf of the little guys. And that is just not the market right now.
And the large player in our world is 3 stores.
3 stores, 4, right? 3. And instead they're just, a lot of what comes out is, hey, we're going to help these little guys. Maybe we share the wealth. And they're just yeah.
So what's this?
Why would I do that?
Yeah. So let's get into how many stores do you actually need in order to survive in cannabis today? You have 2.
I have 2, and
Arlington and
Northbridge.
Northbridge, that's right.
And I think if the cap goes up, we'll have to acquire at least another store. I think it depends on how much of a moat, right, you're built on. What I've seen, which is actually really interesting, is originally you used to have these guys buy stores thinking they can just absolutely go to war next to the guy next door.
Oh yeah,
right.
I get those phone calls,
and you get it.
It'd be like, this guy just moved in, and they're dropping all their prices,
and they're gonna drop. So the question is, what happens when the prices get so low that you can't do that anymore?
Right.
And so what I've started to see is the same guy, and I know one vendor in particular who was like, we're just gonna be the cheapest. We're gonna like storm beaches all around the state, and they went and bought a store that was right next to their own store, like 10, 15 minutes.
Their own
And what I remember talking to them, they were like, they're like, oh, well, we can just plant anywhere. And to be fair, like they were killing it. And I think they're still killing it. It's just interesting to see, instead of going after a pure play market, they've instead procured the next closest place to them. And that, that is right in line with the history of grocery. Like you look at like grocery, you just have these like regional players, very like you look at Star Market, you look at Price Chopper, Publix, like down in Florida, Hy-Vee down in the Midwest, Giant Eagle. I mean, Kroger kind of moved around, but like traditionally it was family run businesses, regional businesses, that kind of like shielded themselves in the state. And then Walmart came and started like
planting their flags and
planting their flag. So now you're starting to see, and I think it's because, again, it's harder to drive traffic with price reduction when the prices start to get so, if apes are $15, right?
And the store has 13, and the store has 13, and you're like,
your gas money is more.
Yeah, it's like, I don't care about making that extra 5-minute commute to this other store that has $2 cheaper.
Right. And then the question is, how low can you really go? Some of these guys now, it's kind of like the delis in New York. Like some of these guys have already paid off their rent.
Yeah, exactly.
Like our stores.
They have no notes.
Yeah. We don't have sunk costs anymore. Right. Like, we basically paid off the money that we had to pay off. Right. So if we had to, like we can go into like hibernation mode and basically make no money. That would suck. But like, so it's a little bit harder now, where in the beginning you had these businesses that were already distressed.
Yeah.
And you had these big guys. Now, where I would say the caveat is, I think if you do, some of these big guys start to like aggregate, like I said, and getting that 50 to 80% reduction on the backside of COGS, either through negotiations or private label products, that's gonna be a problem for these little guys.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's what I was getting to, is like, when you started your stores, you started Arlington first? Northbridge was first. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
You, like, coming with all your experience, you came in and you were like, these are the two spots? Or
I had
fell into your lap?
No, I had a third store. I had a bunch of, remember, I did government work for 10 years.
Oh, so you're like part of HC.
It was like, it was, to me, it's funny because we actually went out and talked to a firm to go get us like HCAs, because that's what we were told that we were having to do.
Everybody was just like, you gotta go hire to consultants to everything.
Like, all that money, all our seed money was, and I was just like, you know what? I did this for a living. I'm going to go out and do it myself. I got every single town I went into myself, we got like an HCA for. We ended up not moving on a lot of those because like we were going to open up later. Yeah. Like the math just didn't look right. So like, I was tied to a major store in the middle of, inside the 93, 95. Like we won that town. And you could tell the town was like, how did you find a spot that fit?
Right. Because they were like, we thought we
kind of had some other people lined up. And I've had like some of the big guys, like, how'd you get that? Like, how'd you find that location? And I started doing the math. Like at the end of the day, for us to open, it was going to be like $5-7 million to open a store. And I'm just like, for us to cover that, like, and keep in mind, I didn't have money. I still don't have money. So,
all the people think Cannabis like very short.
Yeah, like I am on paper because of the tax issues. Like I look great.
Yeah,
real money, it's awful.
Right.
So they're like, like we sold the HCA, and at the time I was like, this, like, man, like this was a terrible idea. That firm just went under. That store just went under that we sold it to.
Wow.
It just like, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And we gave it to a group. They're like, yeah, we're going to crush it here.
We'll work it out.
And then, so yeah, like that's how I got started.
So Northbridge coming first, and Arlington coming later. those were viable spots in your opinion?
They were like
To market.
Arlington definitely was like, this is going to be like an A plus.
Yeah, Arlington is great.
Northbridge, I was like, oh, like we'll be fine. And we were fine for a long time. And then 6 stores open, like freaking, what is it? Hopedale's they got like 2 stores in the same parking lot. They got, they're killing each other.
Right.
And then you have like, so basically, for people who are wondering why they're losing customers sometimes, just remember that 90% of most people do all their daily shopping within a 15-minute commute.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's why Trader Joe's like squeezes their parking lot into like the shittiest parts of like, and so like there's a lot of times where like that's not to say that there is there's competition in the market. And in fact, you should, when you look at like cannabis, it's similar to liquor where like 10% of your customer base makes up half of your sales, right? Very similar. So like that last 10% matter.
It's a huge
Difference, right? But you are going to lose people just because some guy isn't going to drive, and like that's, like look at the Michigan market. Like the Michigan's been killing it for forever. And everyone's like, it's going to keep coming up. They also had 5 border states that didn't have recreational lead. And they're like, oh, spoiler alert, revenue's going down this year.
Right.
You don't think that has anything to do with 2 states opening stores finally this year? Like
along their border.
So it's, I think that's, so when we looked at Northbridge, it's kind of like, it's a B location. Like we have to manage it. We have to keep our expenses low, and we'll probably end up moving it out of like into more of a retail spot in town, as opposed to just like change the location. Cause like you can't survive in retail in the long run. People have options in the back of an industrial
lots,
and like every town was like, they'll figure it out. Like we'll just put you behind like the car repair place.
That's exactly.
And
they're driving down there like, am I in the right?
Yeah. Right.
What? Like, where am I going?
And to be fair, the first few stores that did that in the heyday, right? Yeah. It was working.
Yeah. Leicester,
like we had people coming from like Jersey, like you get like the POS data.
Yeah.
But like, so those people are gone,
yeah.
Right? So now the state's lost. It's why we kind of look at that revenue peaking in 2021 total, not just rec, total. It peaked in 2021 and it really hasn't recovered. It's just gotten back now.
Right. So talk to me about that data. So you were quoting some numbers off camera. You said 160.
I want to say it was 160 million. The CCC's open data is not the greatest in presentation, I think, but it exists. And people can go pull the numbers themselves. But if you look around, what they've done is, and I don't think it's what people need to understand, and it's really telling about where the market's going, is rec continues to climb.
Mm-hmm.
It looks great.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at med, it's doing this.
Right.
And so what I do is I take both of those, add them together. And when you look at those numbers, it was something like roughly, I want to say like 160 million it was doing a month was what it's doing annually. And
so in 2021, that was kind of peak, and now we're kind of just getting back up to that.
Yeah, if you look at it, it kind of peaked into that spring of 2021, and then it like went down, right? And now it's kind of been getting back,
which is interesting because I do talk to when I talk to store owners and they're looking at their dashboards and stuff like that, they're like, revenue's flat, but our units are moving,
right? Yeah,
because there's price compression. So all everything's weed's getting way cheaper, and we're selling a lot of units, but we're barely just making that same amount of money that we've been making.
Yeah, it's why you do absolute margin over percentage margin in grocery as prices go lower.
Right.
And so what people don't like, what you'll hear is a lot of times you'll hear people say, I got to get 50% across the board, 50%.
Right.
And it's like, I'm doing 60, I'm crushing it.
Right.
That doesn't mean
like, if there's a cent on a $5 product, it's 50% on a $50 product.
So like we used to
$8 difference.
Yeah, we used to do bottled water. You procure it for like 2 cents a bottle of water. You sell for, a buck,
Right.
and you're like, I'm crushing it. 99.99% markup. That's still like a buck.
Yeah.
Like, so you have to play a high volume game.
Right.
So what you get is kind of like that inverse curve, right? As prices go lower, you had to, which means that's when you start, and what's coming for a lot of these manufacturers is you gotta start losing bids over like pennies,
Yeah.
because like ultimately, and I've lost bids, in defense when we scaled up. Yeah, we used to sell radios for $65,000 a unit for like one-offs. I know, right? This is
defense.
This is gonna get clipped out for like the defense budget's way too.
Oh wow, $65,000.
$65,000 for a single radio.
Because like a JVC.
Yeah,
to the car.
Well, like a special forces, like on the boat, like that radio is like 65 grand a unit. Because special forces only buys like 100, 200 units at a time.
And you got to develop all the technology,
And you got to help.
packaging and everything.
We used to get RFPs from Apple and Samsung, and it would be for like 10 million units, 50 million chips, or, something like that over like a 5 year, especially when 5G was scaling up, everyone was going to have these 5G terminals. And we lost bids over like a quarter of a penny.
That's wild.
And they just don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care about your story. They don't care. And, you could say, oh, well, that's defense, blah, blah, blah. It's different. Like, go look at like how private label is just absolutely, like Coca-Cola and like all that stuff, like the biggest brands in the world. Like, if they're selling a 2-liter bottle, right, for $2, they're probably selling it for like $1.20, $1.25.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So like not
Coca-Cola. Yeah.
Coca-Cola, not huge, right?
Right.
There are times where Coca-Cola has been removed off shelf for private label.
That's interesting.
And Coca-Cola is now very cognizant of, it's why like sale price math. But again, like my point being is, and then you look at ag products, right? And this is very telling for the flower industry. What's agriculture margins? 10%, 20%?
Yeah.
It's around that. It's not good.
Right.
It's why it's like one of the toughest.
Yeah.
So now but my point being is we're a little bit off topic, but to bring it back, you had to start fighting over pennies and percentages and like all that on shelf.
Well, and I want to get to private label in a second also, because that's another interesting story that we've discussed in the past as well. But the just to kind of round up the story about your store specifically. So Northbridge, Arlington, I want to so Northbridge being a B location, Arlington being A location, like comparatively is like Arlington twice the size of Northbridge?
Yeah, but like at the end of the day, what's funny is, and I wonder what this means for the future of cannabis, because like I remember a big guy being like, how come you don't see like mega stores everywhere, right? And I think like you'll probably see in the long run, like it'll be like bodegas and that's not to say they'll have mega stores, but like think of in the city, like that 10 to 15 minute commute.
Right.
I think long run, now that you're not paying 2-3x for rent just because you're cannabis, someone now could probably pick up a license, right? Find rent we paid rent. I know people paying like $25,000, $50,000 a month, and it's rent, and it's barely covering for like a whatever business. We were looking at rent because, we have the option of a third license, so we're always looking. We have like people offering us rent for like $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
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 So I think there's nothing wrong with Northbridge, and the good people in Northbridge have been great to us. You just have to manage what that business looks like in that market.
Well, what I was getting to is that are they break even? Are they profitable?
No, they're profitable. It's just not a book.
No.
I think for like someone like me and like 2 other owners, right? That's great. Is a publicly traded company going to survive? No.
Right.
And I think that's the big problem with the industry. And like
Everybody has these IPO dreams.
Yeah, the
that they have
IPO
to
dream.
realize.
And that's why it's, the stocks, they thought they could, right? Originally, they're like, we're going to be first to market. We're going to have this huge expensive grow. No one's going to compete with us.
Right.
Ergo, we'll just sell to everyone.
$4,000.
$4,000 a pound. We'll just sell to everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, that didn't work.
Right.
So now we need to figure out a way to like lock up independent stores that aren't under us. Okay, that didn't work.
Right.
Now we need to, so now they need for those grows to survive. Like they need to have huge control. Because at the end of the day, if it goes to the 10% margin thing for agricultural products, right? Like, and that's in markets where there's not excess capacity. There's a ton of excess capacity,
yeah.
right?
But there's also subsidies and stuff like that from the government for
Subsidy. Well, think of it like cranberries. Like here, the cranberry farmers had to unionize just to like get their, growing is a highly, this is going to be, not people aren't going to like this, but like farming is highly socialist, like highly regulated. It just has to be, because you can't just turn a switch on and run a crop.
Right.
And the people that can, like those crops are very expensive per unit to make. Like think of the grow guys. Like when did they plant their harvests? Outdoors, the outdoor guys.
Outdoor guys? I don't know. They probably started indoors in the spring.
So what if they found out the market was like all of a sudden supply chain
forecasted
in the 6 months? What are they going to do?
Yeah.
Like they had, so
the plant's right in the ground. Like,
and this is a great segue into private label, because it's a big part of how private label works, but they have, your cost doesn't matter if there is excess in the market,
right?
Because you start procuring below cost,
right?
Because the guy who's trying to keep the lights on is just happy to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
And, so who do you look that's doing really well and you're wondering how they're getting products? You see these like independent groups that are literally just some under control, some, some not. And they're just like, hey, guy whose grow is, your COAs are getting pretty old, right? Like
worthless soon.
It's going to be worthless soon. We'll buy it all at 20 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
And that'll keep your lights on for the next harvest.
Right.
So cost goes out the door, like all that, like you can get your efficiencies as high as you want. But at the end of the day, if there's excess product in the market, especially in a highly, which people probably aren't going to like, in a highly generic market like flour, right?
Yeah.
Like all the stories about proprietary strains and locking up the customer base, like that, at least here in Massachusetts, I don't know about other states, right?
Really played out.
It hasn't really played out.
Interesting.
Like
well, no, I when I think about it, I always go back to the old kind of like thing that people say is like, oh, I've got this master grower, he's got the best genetics, he's been growing in his basement for 20 years, and then he puts out this fire product, and then he has to scale to like 1,000.
Yeah, it's
like, well, I don't know how to, and then all of a sudden you get like these first few crops that it's just not great, and then all of a sudden they started to get their legs, and then all of a sudden it's just like, well, everybody else has good flour too now. So.
And then you run into brand value, right? Like you need to move product at the expense of killing your brand, right?
Yep.
The little guys, and this is really sad because we've seen this with a lot of these smaller players. And this is, we can talk about minimum advertised price and all.
I do want to talk MAP. That's definitely what
everyone's going to talk about MAP.
I love MAP.
Supreme Court, baby. So like so basically, it's funny because in liquor, everyone wants to be a high-end boutique,
of course,
private label.
Yeah.
And then you come into cannabis and everyone's like, I want to be boutique, but also like really cheap. And you're like, well, why?
You got to choose.
And what the answer is they're just trying to move product.
Yeah.
And they think that they can do that through being really good and then dropping the price. And what they don't understand is the consumer, just because and this is hard, just because they say something doesn't mean they're going to vote with that way with their feet and their paychecks. And we've seen, and this is kind of how brand spiral happens, right? Like,
so yeah, to get into that.
So brand spiral is when you were talking about like we were talking earlier about a major player that like went to the store down the road for, they're like, oh, I'm going to sell it to this guy for $1.45, and he's going to now put it at, $2.90, and you're at $3. So in that scenario, right? What happens? Well, let's pick a higher price.
Yeah,
let's be like difference. Let's be like a boutique. We're a craft cannabis guy. Yeah. We're selling $50 apes. We're crushing it, right? We're like, man, but like our unit sales aren't that great. We're not doing a lot of unit sales in the market. We're charging vendors $25. They're doing a 2x markup. It's just not good enough. You know what I mean? So all of a sudden we say, you know what? I'm gonna give a voucher to the guy next door. We'll give you, if you just drop the price to $40, you're gonna fly. That's the way they're fired. It's gonna fly. It's going to fly.
Lots of shells.
Fly off the shelves. And so he does it, and it does fly. He's like, oh my God, like this is great. And so what do you think the guy next door does? He drops it, and he may even eat the cost. Because you ultimately, as a retailer, had to be in the same price range of exact same products due to the market Maven effect. And the so now the units go to 40. Like, oh my God, we're cruising now.
Yeah,
we're cruising
so many units.
But now you look, your margins are a little bit lower, and you're like, oh well, if we go into where's the biggest volume in the market? It's the $20 eighth, or $15, $20. Look at how many pounds and pounds per customer move that. We got to get into there.
Right.
And I know, and all of a sudden you're like, it's like, okay, well, we can't get that low, but if we're at like 25, right? People are going to move up.
Right.
People are going to get us. Here's the problem with that. The person buying the $15, $20 eighth ultimately doesn't have the money. Like they will buy the $10 eighth, the $5 eighth. Like they're like, that is it.
Right.
And like, we know this in liquor, right? Like think about liquor. Do you see like craft like what does high volume liquor items look like? It's like boxed wine. It's like huge gallons. It's like
for volume,
right? Like that volume. Cause at the end of the day, just because you consume more of a product, right? Like the cool thing about cannabis is it's highly price inelastic, right? So in other words, if prices go up, you'll still buy that unit.
Right.
And so, but it's not like if prices go down, you're ultimately going to buy twice as much.
Right. I was thinking that. Yeah.
Right. So, but my point being is that customer, ultimately the customer has who goes through an ounce a week versus the customer who goes through an eighth a week. Sorry, my phone's like ringing. Is this like but like the customer who has an ounce a week versus the customer who goes through an eighth a week, they ultimately probably have the same paycheck, right? So those high volume consumers become super, super price sensitive.
Yeah.
And it never ends.
Right.
It never ends. And so when you look at like high volume value items, it's so rare in the market unless you build some crazy moat like Arizona iced tea, right? Like it's just so rare for them to overcome that like production cost. And you look at the products that tend to be what, at least in liquor and other stuff, right? It's all like the leftover stuff just repackaged at the bottom.
Right. Well, that's where I was going to a private label also, because it's just like, because you kind of compare those two things together. So brand spiral.
Yeah. So sorry, I got way off track with the brand spiral. So what happens is, right, and if you want to see some cool videos, if people want to see like a relatable brand spiral, and I know I'm drawing a lot of liquor analogies on a cannabis podcast, which is terrible, but I'm trying to like give historical preference.
Well, I was going to ask you kind of like, how do you learn these things? Is you just learned everything through experience, or are there books about this specific?
I mean, like it's, the like Miller High Life is a great example. Like for people at home, champagne of beers. Do you know why it's called the champagne of beers?
I don't remember. I think my dad might have told me.
Right. Your dad. No, it's like, it's called that because originally when it first came out, it was supposed to be something that you drank instead of champagne in like the 1950s. So if you Google or YouTube or whatever, videos of Miller High Life, like 1950s, it's like, suburbia coming home. It's like, we're getting married.
Yeah.
Well, we have
Tuxedo,
Miller High Life.
We're going to have High Life.
And so like, this is where brand spiral, like they just, two things can kind of happen to you if you're not aware of where your brand positioning is in the market. You can someone can come over the top and you're screwed, right? So like for Miller High Life, they didn't see Budweiser come along, and then they didn't see the Sam Adams of the world's come along, and then they didn't see the tree houses and microbrews come along, and you just get buried further and further down the value proposition. The other thing is, and this is why Colgate took it all the way to the Supreme Court, is you get with this price compression thing of your own product. And what happens is that guy that was selling, now they're down to $40, right? So all of a sudden they drop it, they're loving it, they drop it to like 15, right? Now the price goes to 30. But all of a sudden, like, now they have competition, like, on the lower end of the shelf, like, and like a lot of their high-end customers have kind of fled. They're like, oh, I want nice stuff.
Right.
So like, oh my God, now we got to figure out how to get volume. So you'll hear people say like, oh, we're a premium brand. Now we're like the everyman's brand, right? And then now the story changes. Vapes kind of went through this, right? Like in this market, like you had 1 gram vapes for like $70, $80. And then everyone tried to like undercut the market down to like 25.
Yeah. Because
And
it's
now-
just one gram of distillate.
It's 1 gram of distillate. And now everyone
Hardware is more expensive.
and hardware is more, yeah, right. And now like there's just a flood of like cheap no-name vapes in the market, and like guys that tried to undercut, like you can rotate them out because it's distillate.
You can rotate them out.
You just rotate them out. So my point being is now we're at $15 wholesale. So you were selling $25 wholesale a unit, right? People were selling at 50. So now you're at 15. You had to be doing like multiples of higher volume, right?
You have to almost do twice as much.
You also almost twice as much. And that's assuming like sunk costs and like all that other stuff, right? And so you're in a really bad place as a brand. And keep in mind, none of this like brand. So what that means is now you get really kind of like finicky. You're like, okay, well, I can't lower my costs anymore because like I can't beat the guys that are just like scooping stuff out of the bottle and putting, like, I can't get the $5. I'm never going to be there.
Right.
So like, how do I get more volume? Well, I'll go to a guy who drops the, who's known for not being at a 50% margin. Right.
Oh, right. So they
And they'll
do the 40%.
And like, I'll go to this guy and like, we'll butter him up because we know he's not going to do the 50% margin thing. And so at 15, he'll just sell it for like 25.
Right.
So now look at all your other resellers in the market, all the other guys looking around. It's like, well, that guy's selling it at 25. Like I had to eat like into my margin. Are you really going to sit there and be like, well, you won, craft boutique guy. I guess I'll be forced to sell you and put myself out of business. Right.
Yeah.
No, you're going to do everything. You're going to go out and find an alternative vendor. You're going to put out a private label alternative. Right. And like, this has happened. Like, this isn't like hearsay. Like, we saw a lot of brands in this market. This is why Colgate took it all the way to the Supreme Court. So you'll hear something with MAP and Colgate principle. It's why the Supreme Court legally allows companies to enforce minimum advertised price, because your brand proposition is profit to the resellers. And if you lose it, like, so at the end of the day, right, if I was selling an eighth as a store, I was paying $25 an eighth, right? People are like, oh, that's stupid. That's dumb. And it's because I can get an eighth for 10. I'm like, okay, but can you sell it for $50
Right.
and make $25 a unit? Right.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
what margin, even if, and this is why you hear like performance cars, and we can throw out some examples of percentage margin from, I had some friends who do online procurement. Like, you don't care because you're making $25. How many eighths would you have to sell at 15, 20? And that is not to say that you shouldn't have $15, $20 eighths, but ultimately, like, there's the opportunity cost on that $25 eighth. Like that is what a brand proposition is. You are telling the resellers that when you put our product on the shelf,
we move this price.
It's going to make you that much money.
Yeah.
Now you'll hear people say like, oh, you're going to move this much volume. That kind of was a thing. And only really like in cannabis, you'll see that. And like, but sure, like if you move that much volume, you ultimately have to promise the reseller that there's some type of like rebate or additional savings from moving said volume.
Right, exactly. What I think but that's a pretty straightforward calculation though, if you think about it though, because it's like, how many units will we sell at a $25 margin versus how many units can we sell at a $15 margin? And is it enough to make up that difference?
Right.
From the retailer's perspective, they're like, well, you should have a $50 eighth and you should potentially have a $30 eighth.
And I think what was happening...
Now, $50 eighths, again, is a different world.
Right. I know. Where everybody's equal in their eyes, is that like a $50? Yeah. But the point being, like, you had to understand like where your pricing is in the market and like what that does to people.
But how do you do your pricing then? Like, do you have a premium, a mid-tier, a low-tier?
We try to do, so basically what we've done is good, better, best. And it's sad because like we tried to, we've basically lost a lot of premium flower in the market for that because of this brand spiral effect. Like they all went down to like $25 because that is where all the money is. That's where all the volume is. And like, but ultimately that customer didn't vote with their wallets to move up and buy that product.
Right, the premium.
And like, you know, so, right. Like, what do you hear people say? What's the tack?
Right. Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
So like, it's why tack pricing. And we tried when we first opened up Northbridge to not
Focus on tack. Yeah.
because look at the COAs right now. Like a lot of it's not real. Like, but people vote with their feet. And as a retailer, like it's not my job to fight the customer.
Yeah.
And that's what they value.
Right.
And so like, I'm not here to impose my will and my philosophies on that customer base. That's what they want. They want cheap, potent apes or whatever. And that's it. And so like you come along with this like craft story and like there's a lot of cheap, potent flower in the market right now that's just sitting in warehouses about to go bad. And people can go buy that or even good. You know, we have like our private label, like we have a private label right now that's like part of the, we have a supplier requirement that says it has to be within 6 months of harvest. Mm-hmm. And there is the market. What's really funny is because of some of these kind of like Brockton, Fall River markets, they're gobbling up all the really, really cheap stuff, you know, where it's probably going for, they're probably getting their units $2 an eighth or something, you know, maybe $1.
Yeah.
Cause it's going to go bad. But like now where there's parity or arbitrage in the market is like all these guys that fell down, you know, that were like premium before. Now you can like procure on the backside private label, you know, Ace for, you know, fully packaged, probably $7, $8, right? And you're like, now you're starting to get really close to, you know, if you think it's ever going to go up, that's probably right in line with what a long run manufacturing percentage margin is.
That's where it should be
for the industry.
So when you're looking, so let's talk about private label real quick then. So
if we never got to the map, I'm sorry for jumping around.
No, I don't. It's up to you. You want to finish map or do you want?
Yeah. So, all right. So we can talk about, so we'll go in the private label and we'll explain why that's important. But for map, the reason map came to be was because of this effect. Right. And I may get this story wrong in some places, but you can go look up the Supreme Court ruling. I want to say it was
Colgate. It's Colgate.
I realized that. It's Colgate. And I thought maybe it was like Colgate. I think it's Colgate, like the toothpaste company. Yeah. Colgate. Like, I'm not that tied to, I just remember looking it up because like we were scared with the private label. We were thinking about putting in a MAP policy. And I was like, is this illegal? Like, are we like price fixing? And you're not. Like, this is how, so like what happened was Colgate, or a company called Colgate, had Amazon came online and the drop shippers were going nuts. So what do you know, like no overhead, like the, you know, highly competitive market space. And they're just buying like Colgate stuff and like reselling it for nothing. So what do you think like every single grocery store in the market said to Colgate? They're like, what the hell is going on? Like, we are not going to sell. And then, you know, Colgate was probably thrilled. They're like, look at our sales. Like, we're killing it online. And then my guess is a bunch of very angry large resellers went to them and said, we are losing our shirt on your product. You either have to figure out a way to stabilize pricing, or we're just going to go somewhere else.
Right.
And Colgate said, going forward, you can't sell the product below this price. And they got sued.
Yeah.
And they went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Right.
And the conservative Supreme Court, I want to say at the time, basically said, yeah, like this isn't necessary. And this is actually what's interesting is MAP is in like Canada. I want to say in like Canada and the US, it's allowed. They basically said, yeah, we understand like your brand is worth something. And there's real world effects of brand spiral from price discounting.
There could be harm.
There could be harm.
A $5 toothpaste
Yeah,
in
this
the
is
store.
this isn't like price.
$1 in Amazon.
Yeah, it's not price fixing as much as like you are trying to stabilize your brand.
Okay.
And you know, it really in like luxury apparel, it's a huge issue. It's why they like buy clothes at the end of the year and like destroy it.
Yeah, they destroy whatever. They're just like, because otherwise it ends up in like a market.
Yeah, and then it gets devalued, and like people are like, "Why am I buying this?" And then the resellers are like, "Yeah, we're just going to tell everyone it's shit because we can't make any money anymore."
So they'd rather destroy.
It's more, and it drives people insane. And I understand, like in this day and age, how frustrating that must be. Like, you know, when we talk about sustainability and all that, but like at the end of the day, that is how luxury brands survive on scarcity and high deltas in profit per unit.
But on map pricing, do you think that is a tenable strategy in Massachusetts cannabis? Do you think there's a brand that exists today that has enough leverage to start having these contracts with?
I think everything's got to go to shit before you can rebuild. Like, that's what I've learned. Like, I came in, what's the saying? Like, one of my favorite things is like, everyone's got a strategy everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth or face. Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best quotes now in hindsight. Cause like, I think the big guys aren't going to do it because they have to move so much volume. And we've talked to them about it. They're like every C-suite guy that's come in. Cause when we were talking about the GPOs in the beginning, like we had like every major player come talk to us, like all their C-suite guys. And they're just under so much pressure to move so many units. The idea of them going to their investors and saying we are going to slow unit sales down to make money is like, that guy's going to get fired. I know someone who got fired when they agree with us.
Really?
Yeah, he came from liquor, like high-end boutique liquor.
So he understood.
Yeah. And he went back and he was gone within like 2 weeks.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah. Well, it's a good, like, and that's why liquor, like, why do you think you can't buy, when iPhones get released, why do you think you can't find, and like, why is it all the same price everywhere you look?
Doesn't matter if you want.
Because they are suing the living. I mean, there's even software that monitors your brand pricing on a national level, right? My wife works at New Balance. I won't say who, but they caught an online seller discounting. So they basically had to discipline them. And legally, that's a big part of, from what I understand from like map enforcement, is you have to be fair to everyone.
Right.
Like you can't
equally enforce.
Equally enforced. You can't like look the other way if someone does.
If someone's doing it, you have to jump on it.
It's just like super important. It's also why everyone thinks like when you go to like Best Buy and they're like price matching, they think it's because they're looking for the best price. No, Best Buy already knows they are the lowest price. They've pre-negotiated that with their vendor.
Yeah.
What they're doing is you're basically collecting evidence on their behalf that they can give to their lawyers and say, we have a map. Your guys down the street are basically screwing with us. Hey, guess what? You violated the map agreement.
I never thought of that. That like price matching stuff. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a headhunter program to make sure that like everyone's enforcing the contract.
Right. And to Best Buy it, there's no loss to them. It's actually a good marketing strategy.
That's a great marketing strategy.
If you're into cannabis, entrepreneurship, or just like hearing from people who actually build things, check out High Functioning. It's real talk with founders, operators, and big thinkers. No fluff, just game. New episodes drop every Friday, and you can subscribe and listen at highfunctioning.show. All right, let's get back to the show.
Because it's just like, hey, we'll match whatever price.
So that's
why it's an advertised price.
That's why all the big guys do it, because of course they've already renegotiated the biggest deal. So do I think a cannabis firm can come out with a premium brand in this market? I think long run, it'll probably be someone small that isn't chasing, that like has low expenses. And yeah, with you have to live with the fact that you're not going to be high volume. You're going to have to be a little bit on every shelf. The big problem with that, and I which is why I don't know if it's going to happen in the long run for a while, is the bigger a brand is, the more they are the harder they have to defend map. Because why wouldn't, right? Like what gets people, you're a reseller.
Yeah.
I'm going to discount the biggest brand so people start talking about it. And they do it's called a market maven effect. It's when people go into
proximity.
No, it's it's when people go into stores, and this is why loss leaders are a thing. You know, think of a grocery store. There's like 20,000 SKUs in a grocery store. You can't price compare every single product.
Right. Yeah.
So what happens is we tend to latch on to like a few key products and use that as like a litmus test for what the pricing is in the rest of the
store. Yeah.
And that's why loss leaders are a big thing.
Yeah.
Because you go, oh, well, if this
It's
is
$1.99 for a Hunnewell.
yeah, you know, like I go, so like that is why probably Whole Foods, you know, which is notoriously expensive, their farm raised Atlantic salmon is $11 a pound. And no matter where else you go, it's $11 a pound because it's a highly generic product that the customer can easily compare across multiple.
Right.
And so I won't say names, but people I'm married to, but they go into that store and they're like, oh, like they are like, it's not an expensive, Whole Foods is not an expensive. Look, it's $11 a pound.
It's the same.
So like, what are you talking about? Stop and Shop's the same.
Yeah.
That is, and then you go grab like, you know,
Cheerios.
the Cheerios, like their brand of Cheerios,
Right.
and it's like $20 for a box of cereal.
Yeah.
Like the system works.
Right.
That is so.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, like that. Those are the kind of compounding effects of why, like, loss leaders you're not just like arbitrarily losing. You're not supposed to be, at least. You're not just supposed to be just arbitrarily losing money.
Right.
Like there's a consumer psychology to it.
Right. And that's a lot of the consumer psychology that I think can also be effective in cannabis stores if they don't allow us to have discounts and stuff like that.
But my point is someone's ultimately, I think in this market, everyone is still clamoring for customers. We're trying to get people in the door.
Well, do you think we're just swapping customers?
No, you're not. Long run, you're just swapping customers. Like
It's not growth of customers. Now it says there is a little bit like, yeah, I'll try cannabis just like them, but like or 21 plus people who are just entering the market.
So I was consulting for a little bit, helping some of the, you know, because of like the next, and I'm still doing it now. I'm helping another POS system understand like important metrics in retail. And one of the big metrics one of the guys put out was loitering time. And like, so when we started, the biggest metric that the POS system told you was like loitering time of customer in your store, which is like, as if like the less time they're in there, that is like a good thing. And
Well, I feel like it is very transactional right now. Like
So-
you get an online sale, you order it, you go, you pick it up, and you walk.
you're right. But you know, why do you think IKEA is like a mess to wander through, or Costco has free hot dogs, or the truth is the longer someone, or budtender time, right?
Okay.
Like the longer someone is in a store or the longer someone's talking to a budtender, the higher cart. Like people spend more the longer they're in there because like you're not gonna be like, yeah, just give it. I don't want to hear about anything else. I'm out of here.
Right.
So
Well, those people just have that smaller basket size, and
Right.
and they're on to the next thing.
and they're on to the next thing. That wasn't the case. Like, but so why was like someone like Dutchy or someone like giving you reporting where lower times was a good thing? And the reason was in the heydays of the market, it was all about clamoring. You know, the consumer base was infinite. Right.
So just the amount of transactions you can get through.
The amount of transactions you can get. It was literally like, how quick can we churn people?
Right.
Like you look at like, you know, places like Caroline's, they were bussing people in,
Yeah.
right? Or like, what was the one in Brookline? Like you know,
Ascend?
was it Ascend? And
Well, it's a new, Brookline is no, that's Newton.
it was the first one like in the city, but like they sold it. I want to say,
Maybe it's before my time. Like,
but like you couldn't. It was literally how quick you could churn someone out.
Right.
I think that was kind of the big feeling for a long time, and now it's, you know, the same thing with like the ultra discounters, like the vault, like it's kind of like the outlet problem. If there's an outlet everywhere, then do you really get the same bang for your buck?
yeah, exactly.
So what you're seeing is that affects less, and you're not getting people like your cousin's not flying in from New York to pick up some weed or Jersey because they can get it in their own. So now what's happened is the consumer base has become finite.
Right.
And, you know, when I talk to people about margins and stuff like that 2 years ago, they're like, yeah, whatever. Like this isn't, This isn't retail. This is cannabis.
Right.
And to be fair, they were right. Like
At the time.
there was a very different buying behavior in the market 2 years ago. Now we are slowly approaching a traditional retail market. And a lot of the things that 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that people were like, we're never going to see that. That's ridiculous. Like we're starting to see, aggregated buying, people coming off the 50% margin thing, right? Like, to be fair, like what does 50% margin even mean? Like what did it?
Dude, that threw me for a loop when I first got in here because I literally thought like 50% was the other way. It wasn't it wasn't 100%. I was like, okay. So if I think original beverage enhancers were like, I think we were aiming for like $30 MSRP retail. So I was like, all right, we'll sell for 10 and we'll sell for 20 and they'll get 10 of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was 50% of what we were selling it for.
It's super confusing. I suggest people at home, they just look up margin to markup tables and save yourself the headache.
Yeah.
But they, like what I would say is, what was crazy is people were like, no, you do 50%. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. What does that even mean? Like if we're at $50, like people are selling $25 apes to $50, like, yeah, of course they're crushing it. But like, what if the price goes to like $8 apes, $10 apes? You're still just doing a 2X.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
why would you keep it at 50?
And then you hear a lot of these like kind of owners being like, well, I don't understand why I'm not making money anymore. It's like, because your average cart collapsed and you're running at the same percentage margin.
But I think there's also that, and speaking from experience of retailers that I've spoke to within the last year, we'll say, even with the last 6 months, they are seeing those discount stores pop up next to them and they're like, hey, wait a second, they're selling your product for $25, we're selling it for $40.
Yeah, you gotta get rid of that product.
And I'm like, totally. But at the same time, if it sells really well in your store and like maybe you're losing a few people, but you're at least at parity with them where like you're not really losing anything necessarily for that specific line item, for that specific SKU, but you're willing to drop your price to compete with them. I think that it was weird. Like you're giving up all that extra.
You had to be.
Yeah, walk me through that.
You had to be, and this is like one of the big things I learned. I thought we could like, this is kind of my big learning point in the market. I thought we could manage the margins and like ultimately, we could be a little bit higher because we had like a moat on distant. You can't do it. The market maybe enough. You had to be
within what percentage? Like
I would say 10%.
Okay.
I mean, that is like off the cuff. I think you had to be within your brand.
A $30 product should be like 33,
right?
27.
I think as long as you're within 10%, most people aren't going to hem and haw. I think once you get outside that, people are going to be like, this place is crazy.
They're charging too much.
Too much. And it's like, even if it's like $1, like, so what's going to happen? The truth is, right, we go back to like, and this is where private label segues in. Like, you look at like liquor and grocery, and there's a lot of people that used to say that. And there's really two things in the past like 20 years. One, private label has basically exploded. There's stores now like Aldi, right? Costco. They're like 70 to a freaking 100% private label, and they're doing fine.
Yeah.
They have like no major brands.
What percentage of private label is your store right now?
We're only at, and we'll talk about, I'm basically running similar to like what Costco does, which is like you just buy rotational at discount and that becomes, but we're running probably at 30%. I think long run, the way that if cannabis continues to market as a very generic product, I think you're looking at 70-80% private.
Wow, that's wild.
Well, I mean, like,
yeah,
like, is it though? Like when you go into, at least for definitely flower.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're already seeing flower basically.
Well, because people are swapping. It's like, swapping. These 5 or 10 brands are all kind of good. But this one's on $5 less than this one, so I'm just gonna get that one.
And like, I know people at home are probably or people at their computers are gonna shout at me about this, but like, go walk in a grocery store, go into the produce section, and then come back and tell me in that area, which is the highest margin area in a grocery store, is all the fresh produce and stuff like that. Go tell me how much of that is branding.
Yeah.
And there's companies that have done it. Like if you really want a good example of like
I know one.
The Pump Wonderful company.
Yep.
They've done a killer job taking generic products and making it like pistachio. Like they're literally called pistachio.
Yeah.
Like, and I buy that stupid bag.
Yeah.
Like, but and they've done it through a couple of things like branding, pomegranate juice. Like it's all generic.
Yeah.
And I think they're like the tangerines too.
Really?
Like the cuties. Yeah, like look, we're calling it.
They're calling cuties.
We're calling it cute.
Now, but the one brand that I always think of is like Driscoll's. Like they have all the berries, every berry you can imagine.
Yeah, they've done, they're kind of along the lines of more like, I would argue, supply chain. Like they've just taken up the supply.
They just took it all up. They've done acquiring it.
Yeah. It's like saying like Procter & Gamble did an amazing branding. They just,
that's a really good example. So the thing with Procter & Gamble is they actually do have distinct brands in their portfolio.
Right. And think of, in a lot of cannabis firms, when they entered the market, they tried to hide that, right? Like they tried to create all these faux brands. So like it wasn't just you were buying,
right.
Insert huge.
Interesting.
But so I think the reason why I think it'll eventually creep up to 70%, 80% is, you look at that, like that market, like that's 70, 80%. And even if you could say, well, come on, look at liquor, right? Like I would argue everyday liquor is losing more shelf space to private label or kind of these faux brands. Even GPOs have started to move up the ladder, right?
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So like one of the things like a GPO will do is they'll get together and they'll say, we're going to create a brand.
Yeah. So as it matures,
so like
they have the buying power.
They have the buying power.
They have the supply chain.
We have the supply.
Yeah.
Well, they don't even want the supply chain.
No, I mean, they don't have it, but they have all the connections.
They have all the connections. They have the distribution.
Yeah.
And people don't want, you can charge more. Again, like you remember the goal of a brand is to be able to get a higher sale price than another product. And so what they'll do is they'll kind of create, like, they're not called private label. I heard someone once call them retailer owned brands.
Okay, I've heard that term actually.
So basically instead of just, think of like Kirkland, right?
Yep.
Kirkland's not out there putting billboards, they're out advertising. It's just Kirkland.
Right.
Black and white lettering, super boring, intentionally. And then there's so what they'll do is they'll put out like Nature's Promise, I want to say is a good one. Like you see Nature's Promise at Wegmans, you see it. That is kind of like this collective brand.
Oh, interesting.
And you think it's a real brand because you're seeing it in competing stores.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So it's not private label anymore because it's available in Kroger's, Wegmans, whatever.
Yeah, or you see like Total Wine and More, I want to say, is starting to do this. Like, so they basically just they put a story together, like a liquor story, and then they're in front of the customer,
right?
And as brands continue to chase lower cost, lower price point, they just go, okay, well, we're just gonna, if you're gonna give up on your marketing and your story, that's just ripe for private label to take.
Right.
And so you just go, you go into they put everything out there, right? The allure, the facade of choice. Like you go into one of those things, they have thousands of SKUs.
Right.
But they have a guy who suggests wine and they have samplings and
the demos
and like all their stuff is in, when you look at store facings and grocery, I want to say like, you can, good store facings will see anywhere from like a 25 to 50% bump in sales just on shelf location.
Yep.
Which is why you charge for shelf space. Yeah. And we're not charging for I get it. But that's why.
What about some existential threats right now? I can think of two off the top of my head that have come up in the past.
Yeah.
Which is hemp products and which is license cap.
Yeah.
Like, where do you want to go?
So I can talk about the license cap, certainly. I used to care a lot more, but now what I've seen is I don't know if it really, what a lot of people understand is I don't know if it really matters anymore.
But you're number one, you're a store.
I think
you think there's going to be three more people popping up?
I think the license cap was a good idea. And at the end of the day, my experience in government is they are going to take the easiest way out of any headwinds. And, you look in like, so what do you think's easier? like someone comes to you and says, this all goes away if we just go to 4 stores, right? Or, hey, we got to change the rules. We got to change enforcement. We got to vote on these new measures. They're just going to be, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
And like defense went down the same thing. Like we had 200 contractors and now there's 5 and 5 is apparently too many, right? And what starts to happen is like now the government starts to get, as these bigger players get bigger, now the government starts to get beholden to the industry. Right. Like, oh my God, if this guy goes under, we're going to lose. Yeah. Like everyone's going to hear about it. We're going to lose all these jobs.
Yeah.
So now so now it starts to snowball. Now we got to protect these guys.
But do you imagine that's going to happen in cannabis in say like 5-10 years or 10 years?
It's gonna, like someone's going to find a chink in the armor and just.
But that's what I'm saying is that like even the license cap stuff. So right now it's 3. It's the current legislature, last time I looked anyways, was something like every year it goes up by 1. Assuming that you're a good student.
I would just argue, do you honestly even think like for a tier, what's like 100,000 square feet?
Right.
Is that really going to survive with 6 stores?
Well, that's what I was going to say. So exactly.
Right.
So that's a lot of material.
That's a lot of material. And keep in mind, like the people who want 6, like that is what they're swinging for. Right. Because then
again, we just talked about this before. We're just swapping customers.
There's
no net. There's like net new customers.
And the truth is, like, if you want to save those the growers, you got to start like getting heavily involved. Like in every other agricultural product, you got to start getting heavily involved in the canopy amounts and like possibly paying people to take canopy down. Right, like what they do in like agriculture in the U.S.
I think
France destroyed like a couple million pounds of grapes to keep the wine prices high.
Yeah, so I think Carl Giannoni actually brought this up. He was just like, there's a lot more, like there should be some kind of cap on that side of it, on the cultivation side.
Yeah, I mean that's ultimately like the bigger problem right now. Now, like the other thing which I don't buy is that somehow is this going to create an out for the guys who are struggling. Because
the license cap increase, because that was one of the arguments for the license.
Oh, we'll be able to
acquire. I'm be able to sell my store finally because I'm underwater.
Right. So explain to me how that works. Like why you can't renegotiate debt, right? Because it's federally illegal.
Yeah.
So why would any firm who's doing well, right, buy your place that's struggling when they can? Again, we've talked about how like the rent's gone down, costs gone down. They'll just grab some license from the other guy. They'll either go and buy a successful business that they know they can run product through, right? And then they'll just run you out of town. Like, so like that, I don't know that dream scenario where it's like, we're going to like extend a life. Like the truth is like, you should figure out a way to take that money and get those people out with that millions and millions of tax revenue that you're generating. And you sold the dream to a bunch of economic empowerment people that are now, like, you better hope the Homestead Act doesn't take their house with debt, right? And receivership.
Right.
So like you do, I mean, the industry, I think, owes some responsibility to those people. We should figure out how to get them out. So anyways, but at the end of the day, like you look at the firms right now, there's already firms that are violating the cap. We all know they're out violating the cap.
Yeah. So there's definitely some stores that have, or some people that I know have like 4.
Yeah. Like,
and that's why I was just like, well, I thought it was 3. And then I was like, why do they have 4 stores?
But a lot of the, what I would argue and I don't think it's going to change anyone's opinion, so it's whatever. But I would argue that if you think like you going to 6 is going to keep that huge grow, what's going to happen is if we go to 6, whatever, right? Why would everyone else is going to go to 6, right? And this is what happened in defense. It's all about what no one kind of does the calculation on is it's all about relativity to each other, right? So if everyone goes to 6, right, and everyone has a tier 10 grow, are you going to, or whatever that 100,000 tier 11 or what, are you going to buy any product from anyone else?
Right. You're going to run your own product.
You're going to run your own product. Yeah. So now you've lost all your independent customers, right? So now can you keep a tier like what with the original?
Isn't that private label though? To a certain extent, that's like 30% private label.
Sure.
For flowers.
Yeah. So like I would say is like you
keep a couple brands around.
like, when originally the thought is our stores give us the power to then force everyone else to take our product on.
Right.
Now you've raised it to 6. I don't know. Like, like what I've heard is a lot of vendors tell me like, we need to get to like 12. 12 will keep this facility alive. But like, you're not
I mean, a grow facility.
A grow facility to keep your vertically integrated alive is at 12. So 6 isn't enough. Everyone else is going to be trying to do the same thing. And now you have no one to sell to because they're going to be running their own private label.
Right.
So what do you do then? And then on top of that, so you look at like the guys that are, basically salivating are the ones that have probably been secretly operating at like 3, 4, or 4, 5, 6 now. And then they're just going to like go to like 7, 8, 9, 10.
Are they doing it? Now, I know this is all hearsay because I actually don't have any written proof of any of this stuff, but are they doing it because of the 10% and under rule, or are they doing it like explicitly like above it?
I think it's along the same
Like shell company style, like it's just like, oh, there's
I think people like overthink it. Like, and this was like the same thing that we ran into with GPOs is when I first suggested a GPO, everyone's like, oh, we'll physically have like a store and we'll control the whole market with that physical asset. And at the end of the day, you just do it through contract negotiation. Like you don't need physical. And I think that's what a lot of these groups have just said, all right, well, we'll just, as long as everyone's on board, like we just buy and like, we don't need like a warehouse. We don't need like,
because when I think about it though, if actual like equity ownership in the license and they're on like the,
I don't think you even need to be like, you just,
right. That's what I was getting to. So like, if it's not that, then there's another way of doing it.
Well, so there's a reason why right now they're not as sophisticated as like it's basically like what you're seeing is like friends and family.
Right.
They're doing it.
My cousin,
my buddy, like, where, like we don't have to run a contract because a contract's a paper receipt of us breaking the rules.
Right.
So like, and to be fair, like I would argue like if they don't physically have control and there's no contractual obligation, sure. Like,
right.
Like, what are you going to say?
Right.
Like they're just
why they got approved.
I mean, like I've thought about going to some of those guys, like if the GPO doesn't work out and just being like, yeah, hey, take, buy through, you guys can do the buying for my store.
Exactly.
Like, why wouldn't I want 50% off on everything?
Right. Exactly.
So like, and that is without a contract. That's, the big thing is you just had to, so that's what I mean. I think like this whole thing about the cap, this idea that it's going to save or, really help out. I don't know. Like, I think it's going to, I think like anytime you see stuff like this, you get like an acceleration in consolidation.
Well, that's what I was thinking about. It's going to, because you even started out this whole pod with like, there's a consolidation happening in the future.
Right.
And this just accelerates that.
Yeah. You just accelerate. Like you go to 6, the 6 becomes nowhere near enough to keep it alive.
Right. And you're like, all right,
we got to
go to legislature.
Yeah. We got to go as control. So like my point to the people who are thinking this goes away after that, like that has never been proven out.
Right.
In like the history of American business.
I would never bet against another person.
Yeah, right.
Like, of course I want, after 6, I'm going to go to 12.
So like ultimately markets do consolidate. Yeah. I would just say though, like we had, when you look at the problems in the market and why those guys are in trouble, is it because they weren't big enough? Or is it because we have like millions of pounds of excess weed? We have hundreds of licenses where people are in the same parking lot, competing against each other. I would argue like those are some of the bigger issues at play, and the market will eventually take care of that. But at the end of the people who are on the short end of that stick, if we continue to do what we're doing, are going to be all the little guys.
Well, that's just, so is there a solve in your head, a fix for any of this in your head?
I mean,
the market's going to do what the market does, and you're kind of just for the ride.
Like the whole fund that they created to like, instead of just helping them get out, like they're like, oh, we'll do capital expenditures.
Social equity fund.
Yeah, the social equity, like, I would have probably taken that money and been like, all right, let's take a look at your assets. Like, how much debt is it? Instead of just lighting money on fire,
which you couldn't buy product.
You can't buy product with
it. You can't pay payroll.
So like ultimately, like let's call a spade a spade. They are underwater.
Yeah.
So like why, and the whole point is the industry is supposed to help them. So maybe some type of like favorable buyout, right, would have been like, go around and just say like, hey, if we give you this much money, like
Walk away.
walk away. And that's what
Okay,
they, so that's what they
$500,000.
do in agriculture. Like they tell farmers, like, if we give you this much money, take down the field. We're trying
The last check that they cut were up to $500,000, I think.
for like what? Like it's not going to help the store.
Right.
Like it's not going to fix the core business. But it sounds nice. It sounds like they're doing something. So that's what I mean. Like that's what I would have done. I'm not in charge of the CCC.
Right.
So if you were, what would you change?
I would take that. I would get aggressive about trying to figure out a way to take the canopies down.
Buy some.
buy some of the stuff out. I'd probably go after the people that are flooding the market with the illegal product, right?
You mean like the inversion stuff?
Yeah, the
People are
inversion stuff, right?
product from outside.
Taking product from outside the state and selling it. That's not a great look.
Yeah.
I'd probably go after the license, like people violating the license cap. And again, like I'm not necessarily against the license cap, but if the game is we're all on fair play,
Exactly.
then you need to enforce fair play. Instead of, I had an inspector tell me that they knew that they're violating the cap, that there's people in violation. So like, why aren't you doing anything about it? And keep in mind, parallels again, defense had the same stuff. Like is the font on my limited access sign not being the right size, is that going to save the industry?
Right.
Exactly. Is that real? Like if you have those investigators out there every single day, like cracking down, right?
Full-time
salary. Like I would say, look, guys, I don't think this is where we should be allocating our resources.
This is not the hill to die.
This is not the hill to die on. Like,
the fun.
So like,
fire extinguisher.
Yeah, or is the fire, or like, is there the please wash? And I'm a big hygiene guy, but please wash your hands in the lavatory. Is that where we're gonna, or like, do we really need like 3 guys to like triple check ID? Like,
yeah,
I would say we got 3 major problems. We have people openly violating the cap rules. We have people doing inversion, and we have way too much canopy. We should dedicate all our resources trying to fix that. And they
3 things.
And they may not be able to, but like, just explain to me how, like asking if there's a second signature on the, if where's your green lace log, have a second signature. If that's going to solve the issue while you just have guys like putting a ton of product in, meanwhile, like the store down the road's just taking a bunch of black market stuff, running it through their store and taking cash deals. Like explain to me how yelling at me for my second signature is going to save the market.
Right.
And they have the money and resources to do it. They're like 3 times the size of the liquor commission in budget, right? Yeah. So it's like, it ultimately you have to choose where to allocate resources. And I just think, and I don't think it's not like they're incompetent people. It's just they're not in the industry. Like it's
never even been in industry.
They're not in an industry.
They don't understand.
And the feedback to them is obviously going to be through like some lobbying arm or some government, and what they're telling them is what ultimately is important, to that paid customer of the said group. And the feedback to them is just like, you gotta, it's going to be like the cap's the problem. Don't worry about the grow. Like, cause like, who do you think has the big, and again, I'm not against that. It's just, you ultimately have to focus on like where the problems are. Yeah. And I guess like are fake COAs. Yeah.
That's obviously
maybe putting pressure on
fraudulent.
The test labs probably should have been the one thing that should have been government owned, because you shouldn't have made safety a for-profit business. Right. So like that's what
incentives are not.
The incentives are not aligned. But now that cat's out of the bag.
Right.
And to be fair, grocery had that same problem for years, and they fixed it by the grocers basically creating their own test labs. Because if some guy pisses on a bunch of strawberries or shits on a strawberry and gets E. coli, that farm's not taking the heat.
Right.
Walmart's taking the heat who sold that strawberry.
Right.
And those farmers at 10% margin are incentivized to just get that product through testing, bribing, and so so the grocers are like, well, wait a minute, the incentives are not aligned. There's bigger downside for unsafe testing for us than for the farmers. We need to take testing into our own hands. I'm not saying that's the answer here, but like ultimately you need to come up with a mechanism where sadly profit isn't the primary driver of the test labs. And I don't know if there's an easy way to fix that with all the test labs at this. But again, so those are my, maybe I'll run on that platform for the next.
Well, I was wondering, and that maybe that alludes to what I was thinking about. Part of the question about the license cap was, I tried to put a debate together, but I didn't really get that much interest. So I'm like, why do people?
Well, first of all, I think some of those people that were going to debate knew who I was.
Because I invited you also.
Well, you gotta remember, I've done government for a living. Like I work both sides. So like, I'm not like, I think and this is like TV News 101, right? Is like, you find kind of like a weak person to be like, oh, like they don't know. I won't.
Which was never my intention.
No, I know it's not your,
just like,
but just so
I just want to have an open dialogue about it because I want to be educated on the issue.
All right. I know
because we've got different. We got Mass Eon, we got the MCC, Mass CBA.
Here's a lobbying trick for all the folks at home. We used to have a saying: anything that helps small business in defense, anything that helps small business helps the big guys more. So you need to be able, if you're going to pass legislation, you need to be able to sell a story of how it's going to help the little guy, right? Some of those little guys were not part of the little guy organizations anymore because they are part of a larger incentive.
Right. So I get what you're saying. So the story is the most important thing in lobbying.
Like
small business story.
Yeah, like it's like farming, right?
And I didn't remember hearing that in the State House. There was like two groups that one group was like, it's going to help small businesses, and the other group said it's going to help small businesses.
But again, keep in mind, business it's all about relative. So like you may, think of something like removing health insurance for businesses, right? Not having to carry health insurance.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to help the local mom and pop shop. That's also going to help Walmart with like 200,000 employees, right? And then they have economies of scale elsewhere to just continue to drive your expenses. So my point is, and I think some of those people who are arguing for how it's going to help the little guys, it will probably in the short run. But if, again, like this market is going to consolidate and you are going to be looking on the short end of the stick, and I think that's what
you won't have any leverage then.
Right. You won't have any leverage.
Yeah. And for this company that has 6 stores, they can just bully you.
Right. And like, so, I think, like the economic, but it makes think of the economic empowerment. Some of those guys are like right across from each other.
Yeah.
Like think of like what Yamba and Western Front.
Yeah.
So if they had passed that law a year ago when Yamba was still in business, right? Which one of those guys is getting out? Because it's only one of them. And one of them's getting driven into the ground.
Right.
So my point. It's not, they are struggling right now. And I just think there's a reason some of them are, I think when you look at when they were going to have those people come up to debate, I think the selling point is you don't know business, Mike, and you don't speak for us. And I think the two things were, I'd like to think I could talk a little bit about business and manufacturing and scaling and where this goes. And I don't, from what I understand, the people that on the other side of the debate were not representing anymore the little guys.
Interesting.
And like, that's a common tactic, right? Like, that's why when you see like the farming legislation right now, you're seeing all these 70% of large scale farming is like huge corporate entities, right?
Yeah.
But like, they're not showing like what's the big one? Monsanto, like a CEO crying over the money going for the
berries or something.
Right. They're showing like small families and, like wherever. And they do exist, but like this, whatever happens with that legislation is not going to help those people in the long run. That's kind of what I look at here. It's like, whatever, like I'm agnostic. I'm disappointed that we kind of got here and there was some other, but at the end of the day, like, and think about me, I have 2 stores, right? I have most of my debt paid off. Like, I'm probably going to go out and get more stores, right?
Right.
Or sell my profitable stores if competition ever comes in. So like, I'm okay. But like, who's not? Like the guys who are like, I mean, how many stores in the market are profitable at this point?
I don't even. I
400 licenses, probably what?
No,
100?
yeah. So like maybe 25% of them.
25%. So like, that will ultimately just, and like the market's not changing right now.
Right.
What I would say, like it's starting to stabilize in a lot of ways. But so when you change the law, you're basically going to just flip the chessboard over. Right. And I think it'll be a death blow to that 75. It'll definitely be a death blow to that 75%.
As a majority of this.
Majority, because it'll pump more money into the market, right? Like investors are going to come in. They're going to be like, all right, like consolidations happened.
Right.
They're going to see
who are the winners.
Who are the winners? Let's try to pick the winners.
Yeah.
And again, like I don't think it's not the end of the consolidation. So you're going to go through another round. So for me, it's kind of like just general annoyance, like it's not a hill. Like, as you mentioned, I'm not going to die on this hill fighting the legislation. Like, but I think it's, and I have some friends that now own like larger firms, right? And they're good people, but at the end of the day, it's a business. Like these are businesses, and it's gonna just remember that like 50 to 80% COGS reduction. Like you are not, if it goes to like 4, 5, 6, you are not going to survive on your own. Like there's just no, like there's no discussion.
Maybe this and the GPO comes back in.
Yeah. Like, well, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Well, like the GPOs like struggled, and what I've always joked about is I needed like another GPO to make my GPO. Because like there's no boogeyman. Like there's no threat to these like 2-3 store guys.
Right.
But if this changes, like you're just not going to be able to compete.
Right.
Like, so I realistically need a Walmart.
Right.
What's frustrating is like, I see there's big guys out there that have the leverage and they don't want to like get out ahead of this.
So they're waiting for the dust to settle.
They think they're going to be the winner.
Right.
And in some markets they will, but like I can tell you, go look at, was it like Brook Shields in Texas? They own 300 stores. Meyer in the Midwest, they own like 128 stores in grocery. They all had to join a GPO,
even at that size.
And in that size, at like they just wouldn't even like. There's I want to say Brook Shields. There's a great YouTube video of them like putting out a promotional, switching over their private label to the cooperative's private label. Mm-hmm. And that happened in like a 10-15 year period.
Got it.
So like this isn't like I'm safe for like 20-30 years.
Right.
Like this is like and like federal legalization. Like then it's like the whole thing. Do we end up?
Well, that seems more extreme to me.
Well, like what's crazy is like now, it's kind of funny. Like I always thought liquor had the weirdest laws, and now after going through this, like all the laws make sense. Like minimum, minimum in pricing on products. Why products can't come from the outside? Like think about it, right? Like if federal legalization happens, all the growers in 48 states are done.
Yeah.
Like
there's a couple states.
There's a couple states.
Pretty well.
Maybe Glass House, right?
Yeah.
And then but it's all going to like where water and electricity is dirt cheap.
Yep.
Or you just grow it outside for all the distillate.
Yep.
So the question is, now the states have the problem if legalization happens, right? Do you protect? Like, do you say like we're banning all state?
Well, then you get some
interstate
and all this other stuff potentially.
Keep it alive.
And this is something we've been saying for a long time. Weed doesn't grow naturally in Massachusetts.
Right.
Well, it's going to be full of mold and I'm not going to.
It's going to be expensive. It's going to be expensive or
more expensive to actually.
Ask anyone how easy wine growing is in New England. Like how many big pints, how many wineries here? Those are handful. There's a handful, but it's exactly Sonoma. Yeah, right.
It's not like great.
I'll give you the fruit wine people are great, but they would just like what I would say is, like that's a big thing, and then like the 280E thing goes away, right? And so like the vertical guy,
cash flows.
What happens to the guys whose entire business model was like being able to leverage that tax savings when the independent guys weren't? Right. I don't know. But my point is like there's a lot. Maybe like 10 years ago, the federal legalization, like as a consumer, that's what people want.
Right.
I just now wonder like, why would the states allow external product to come in and kill all their tax revenue?
Right.
Like how much do they, like what's the tax on like manufacturing goods, like generally for the state?
In Massachusetts?
Yeah.
Well, we don't pay a tax.
You don't pay a tax at all.
Yeah, it's only retail that pays tax.
It's only retail. Is there town taxes?
Well, there's an impact fee, but we have our HCA waiver.
Gotcha. So now now some of that stuff.
We don't really have an impact. There's not really like we don't have a crossing guard for people walking across the street. You know what I mean? Like
There's not enough time to go over the HCA stuff.
yeah.
So like, so maybe that's not a thing. So that's probably not a thing, but ultimately, like how many jobs get lost?
Yeah.
When like all this goes away,
Yeah.
like all the guys that are like fighting, like if federal legalization happens, like, and then like the big guys had to explain to their investors why they have like, like $1 billion of dead assets, across 20 states.
Yeah.
Like, what do? You just shut down all those grows and then write it all up? Maybe.
Right.
So my point is, what happens then? And I think legalization, I'm a proponent of legal, like the schedule thing's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But, the thing is the market at this point has worked its way around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why that's why I was bringing up hemp even, just being like, there's all these workarounds.
Yeah, like the workaround with hemp. And I think like, and my thing is with hemp, it's like, yeah, if you let us sell hemp and not pay the taxes, like, okay.
Sure. Exactly.
But like, and this is why liquor licenses are limited. And like, cause you have, or car dealerships like are like the original argument is you forced all these businesses to go through living hell to get these licenses and capital investments. And now you're just going to like look the other way.
Right.
And so my question is, my answer to that would be, look, if you want hemp, let the cannabis stores sell hemp.
Yeah.
But like, you got to enforce it. Like you have to protect the industry you're taxing into the ground.
Right.
Or don't tax them.
Right.
But you can't have it both ways. Like it's going to happen. Target's got hemp. Total Wine and More is trying hemp. So like.
And it's D2C.
It's D2C.
Yeah.
You're not going to
ship to your doorstep now.
Ship to your doorstep. So you're either.
What happens to gummy brands?
So you're either going to have to figure out a way to ban it.
Yeah.
Or you're going to have to allow the stores to sell it. But like this whole, like be able to talk to what's the manufacturing one? Like, oh, I'm sorry. Like we can't talk to the agency that enforces hemp versus the CCC. MDAR. Like, come on.
Right.
You telling me like there's no, the answer is you just, it's work.
Right.
It's work to fix it. And again, we've talked about this. Like if you're legislating and do you have to do work or do you just get to pass one thing to like make it all go away?
Right, exactly. So from the legislation side, the path of least resistance is let's just pass it.
Just let them go. Fuck
yeah.
It. We don't care. And I think that's sad.
Yeah.
And I think
there also potentially there's tax revenue involved too. And
so thank
Massachusetts isn't going to give up the tax.
Thank God corporate greed is I think the tax revenue is it's a huge incentive.
Yeah.
And again, yeah. So like, I don't have a problem with the taxes as long as everyone pays the tax.
It's the fair.
Everyone as long as everything, like the defense firms didn't care that you had to have classified buildings because everyone had the same. Where they get screwed is if someone doesn't follow the rules and is able to sell into the industry.
Right.
And so when you remove those barriers, what you're ultimately talking about is there a competitor outside the market? So like, I think we should remove barriers like the IDing, these tax things, because ultimately the black market is a competitor.
Yeah.
Like that is like, you can't pretend that it's not.
Right.
And the hemp is a competitor and you can't pretend that it's not. And I think like, it's not regulated. It's like all these things that you're making us.
Well, there's also just backdooring of products in general. Cause I was just in New York.
Yeah.
I happened to go to an after party for an event and I'm talking to the guy who's running a very famous brand.
Yeah.
Very well-known brand, backdoored.
Yeah.
And they're also now becoming a licensed brand in the New York market.
Yeah.
And they're just like,
I know who you're talking about.
And so and this dude was like, oh yeah, I backdoor like, X amount of product for them, daily practically or monthly.
Yeah. They're washing it through there. Like there's guys at the Oregon, California market's over its head.
Yeah.
So like they got to get it out.
We got to move the product.
We got to move the product. Right.
Exactly. And even the idea of the inversion side of it, like financially, it's a no brainer because it's like, okay, even if you can, because it grows so nicely.
Yeah.
Out in the West Coast, you can get a kilo of THC,
No taxes,
$750,
and you think of how those,
and you can buy it in Massachusetts for like $4,000, $5,000. Like, why wouldn't you just run trucks all day?
right? And that's and like I mean, you look at like so I mean, like that's the thing.
Again, I have no proof of this actually happening personally. I actually don't
Legally speaking,
this.
none of us know who any of these people are, or there's no.
But I do know that dude was talking a big game, and I was like, if this dude's serious.
But
like,
there's guys in this market doing it,
Yeah.
right? Like we know there's guys in this market. The CCC knows there's guys in this market.
Right.
Like, so I would just say like, it's like allocate your resources appropriately
Right.
and protect, and you're gonna have to, the cat's out of the bag. You guys wanted highly regulated markets. You probably shouldn't have done that. You probably should have been a little more hands off and just said, we just ask that you test everything.
Well, I think that's why, and I'm going to go in circles real quick, because I think you brought up a good point, which is like the budget for the CCC is, what do you say, 2 or 3
I think it's 2 or 3 times larger than
the Alcohol Commission, which is interesting because it's
like a tenth of the market.
Right. But I think with just the enormous paperwork involved in these regulations, like there's so many rules around all this stuff and things you have to do after you compare to, that like you need bigger budgets to support like a giant team to be able to enforce all these things.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. Like
enforcing it, whatever you want.
I would just say it's like, and that's why in like defense, like when they used to come in, like we had inspectors and we had all that. They didn't come looking for like the ticky-tack stuff.
Right.
Like what the ticky-tack violations they were for, if you were doing something real bad, all that ticky-tack stuff was just like, kind of like on top to bury you.
Yeah.
Like if they couldn't get you 100% on like something, but they knew you were being bad,
They just add up.
they're like, all right, well, look at all this like, red tape violation you guys are doing. We're going to bury you because of. So, but they didn't purposely go looking for it. And like when they came into the buildings, there was a lot of like, we used to have a saying like, is it A or B? And the answer is yes. It's just like, And so, that's kind of what I think about when I think about cannabis. Like, sure, fine. Keep all the rules that aren't doing anything right now, because it's going to be legislatively a huge pain in the ass to fix it.
Yeah, at this point.
Right?
Written. Yeah.
Don't go killing people and and start going after the big problems. Right? Like, I know you have limited resources. I know it's a hard job. I am soft on government because at the end of the day, I had friends that worked in it.
Yeah.
They don't pay a ton of money. It's all the difficult things get sent to government to fix, right? And at the end of the day, how do you run an organization where profit and revenue isn't the driver of success? Like what does it mean for success for the CCC?
That's a really good.
I don't know.
I think it would probably have something to do with diversion. Because when I think of the state responsibility.
Well, what happens if they take care of the problem?
Right. Well, I mean,
now you get perverse incentives and like they got to go look. So, I mean, like it never, like I would tell you like your job, like we need to have like a longer horizon and kind of look at like big problems, put out there that we're aware of those big problems and then show evidence of fixing it.
Right.
But like posting the revenue every month, like, and like with a declining revenue, why? Right? It's so.
The social media team is just like, hey, we got to post something.
Yeah, like,
get that chart again.
Yeah, like show you guys like rating someone who's doing like inversion, right? Or like showing that you caught someone violating the COAs, right? Like that stuff is gonna like.
Yeah, but I think that's almost like. I mean, I think they might look at that as like anti-business. It's like we're supposed like, what is their goal ultimately though, right? Is it to support the industry?
You can support the industry if you and I would argue. Like these aren't like the vet, like there isn't like an organization right now who's like, we need to, what do they call them? Like an industry cooperative, right? Like there's not like a trade group that's like, we need to allow fabricated COAs.
Right.
Like,
obviously.
Like who, so like, we talked about the 3 things, inversion, right? The grow. So maybe there's a couple of people that are going to fight you on the grow, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a couple of people that are going to fight you on the inversion, right? And what was the last one? The
license cap,
right? at the end of the day, there's 400 other businesses out there. And I think a lot of them at this point have become very disenfranchised. That help is along the way. And so they are kind of just like, yep, like
well, that's our current operating system right now, is that like
that's how I
no
operate.
one coming.
I am just assuming no one is coming to save me.
Right.
Sorry,
You've got to figure it out yourself.
yeah, like to my investors out there, I'm sorry. So I don't think it would be like scandalous for the CCC to be like, yeah, it turns out like hundreds of thousands of units were being like arbitrarily fabricated in a test lab. Like,
well, I think they did put out some stuff around that. Sure. Like, hey, we found 700 violations or 700.
cool. What are they doing
COAs.
about it?
And I think there was the idea of a recall. I think it was like self-recall.
Great.
It wasn't actually like they didn't force it, but they were like, hey, you should recall it. And then
Yeah, I got a letter from my store. Like, they're like, hey, like,
products.
there's some product. Do you think any of the customers knew like which one of those products? And we pulled those products.
Yeah.
But like the customers don't know who was like violating that. The customers
Unless
don't
you're really paying attention.
unless you're really
the industry.
Yeah, so like
don't know.
someone like Grant Smith Ellis or whatever, right? Like
Track it.
they'll go track it down. But like the average consumer that is why we have like safety commissions and like because like the average person just doesn't understand or like our lives are too busy to like do all this like internal investigation to like be like tracking down businesses. And so that's what I mean. Like, what, and like the license caps, they like, do you want people violating the license cap? Like we either raise it or we don't.
Right.
But do you want people skirting the law?
If I was a retailer, no, I would be like, no, 100% you should stay within these boundaries.
It's a good thing for most of the retailers, but I understand because consolidation is going to figure its way around anyways.
Right.
Like you had to have a level playing field.
Right. It has to be level playing.
It's got to be.
And I feel like that's the same thing. And like, that's one of the things that we always, struggle with too, is because we see other brands doing some stuff where like, I don't know if that's like in the spirit of the regulations. And I'm just like, should we do that? Should we even try that? And I'm like, no, we should stay away from that because I don't think it's in the spirit of the regulation.
So I asked someone about stuff like that a long time ago. And he's been in like a pretty like basically the metal aluminum business for years. And he's like, yeah, everyone just like rats each other out.
He's like my team.
It's like
you're not rat any. If you see it, like
I don't know. Like, some of the guys that like it's such a small industry, and he's like, yeah, it's the only way to like keep it fair. Otherwise, like they're just gonna steamroll you.
Yeah, well, we're still the brands are so small, especially in my category, where I'm just like, if I see people doing some weird things, I'm just like, don't rat them out.
I had another store shadow ban me on Google. They like reported me like on this. We were kicked off of Google for like 2 months, and like it tanked our sales.
Yeah,
and we knew who it was because the same thing happened to the competing store. There was only 3 of us, right? Like, and that store didn't get banned,
right?
And so like, in the end, I was like, that's how it came out. I was like, what should we do? And the feedback was, oh, you should do the same to that. I'm like, I didn't end up doing it. I didn't have the heart.
Right.
But like, so my point is like, is that better than the CCC like stepping in? You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. Ultimately, like we have these regulations, we're dealing with the regulations, and we see people doing these, stretching a little bit here and there. Like, retail, it's like, oh, discounts and
the discount things. Like,
oh my god,
do we have the discounts or not? I don't.
Because we see some stores be like, it's 50% off today or whatever.
I just don't care one way or the other. But like, just tell me what the rule is. Like,
and enforce it.
And enforce it. That's all I care about.
Yeah.
And
enforce it equally. And I had Executive Director Travis Aaron on here. Yeah. He said there is we're trying to level the playing field and stuff like that.
When?
I don't know. It was also a long time ago when we had him.
How long ago? So like
the tapes.
Yeah, like I would just argue like the industry is starting to stabilize. It feels like it's starting to stabilize in this state. And things, but it feels like drastic things are about to change, right? Especially if this cap thing, like it's all going to get shaken.
I wonder what the first move is going to be. I actually wonder who the first player is going to be. Like, I don't imagine Trulieve coming back. You know what I mean?
No, they're not going to come back into
but like there are 300 stores in Florida.
Yeah, so what you're probably going to see is the guys who have 3 stores, they're going to go out and raise a bunch of capital, and they're going to go, we're going to get our numbers. And they're going to be
their path to profitability.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, that's consolidation in a market, right? You get entrants who, they get big and then they get too big to fail.
Yeah. What if there's a bunch of people out there who also maybe don't have the best stores that may also have 3 stores, and they have to go convince their investors, and they probably convince their investors by saying, well, if we just get a 4th store, it'll fix all the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah, like, no one lives long enough to learn from their past mistakes, right? If we just, and then you're going to get people who get really aggressive towards competing stores because they've raised all this capital. Yep. And again, like, this isn't fixing the market. You're just kicking off another fight. Later fight, which will drop prices even further.
So we're looking for a roller coaster.
We're looking for a roller coaster ride. And you had stable. It's starting to feel stable. Yeah. Because, like, you did let them... For good or worse, you did let the market regulate itself, and workarounds were created. But now you're about to, like, kick all that, and so it's just like, I don't know, maybe hold off on it. At least they're thinking about over 6 years. But, like, if you're doing, like, over 3 years, that's like nothing in the shape of, like, guys waited 3 years to open their stores.
Yeah.
So, like. Or longer, right?
I have definitely heard those stories.
So I think, like,
there's stores that are coming online now that it was started in, like, 2021 or something.
Oh yeah, like,
you're just launching now.
Who's the group with, like, that opened up in Caroline's, like, parking lot in Hopedale? Like, how long have they been trying to find a place?
I don't remember, but there is. Yeah, I don't remember. Because there's a bunch of stores there in Hopedale now, and we're neighbors to Hopedale.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't remember half the store. I remember High Hopes, and I was like, yeah, High Hopes.
Yeah, Ross and those guys.
We got Comcan, and we got High Hopes. Okay, great. And we had Netta, of course, in Franklin.
Yeah.
And then we'll
Netta was the one in Brooklyn.
Oh, the Netta in Brooklyn. That's right. Because they had the bank.
Yep.
That's right.
So those, like, they and they were just opening up. They just opened up, like, 3 months ago. They are, like, in the same shopping center in a town of, like, 30,000 people.
I know.
So, I mean, like, is that the problem, or is it, like, or is it that stores don't have enough?
Save everybody.
You can't.
And I feel like I think I agree with you.
I think that's a tough pill for the CCC.
And EE, there's promises that were made implicitly,
I think
explicitly, that were like, this is going to be a great market for you to enter.
And this is why,
and the dream kind of
set. And so, like, 2 things. That's why I'm soft on government, right? Like, because there's no winning for them.
There's no winning. Yeah.
Yeah, and, like, I doubt there would have been a winning solution, because every other state messed up to them.
Yeah.
And we owe some, and that's why I think, like, instead of just, like, creating some slush fund for the economic empowerment people to waste until their businesses inevitably go under, like, why isn't that just reallocated to help them just get out?
Right. Use some of the...
Because they're going to go out, or how much money are they putting aside? Is it like 20 million? It's like,
it's over 20, I think.
Like 20 million every year. How many stores could you help get out? It'll help a lot of stores get out. And I'm pretty...
But what's stopping them from starting new ones?
Yeah, so, like, you need him sign something that says, like, entire investor group.
But it's not even just that. It's more just a simple fact that, like, I think the dream was sold so heavily that there's still people who are in the queue, like, I can't wait to open because all my problems are going to go away once I open my doors.
Yeah, there's going to be reverse incentives, right? Because, like, they're like, oh, well, this money's coming.
And then they have to bail out.
So let's think. All right, let's think. We're solving all the problems for the CCC. So, like,
you should wrap soon.
Yeah, like, we need to come up with some solution for, like, the earlier you've been in, and the more, like, maybe did you make money? Like, they can turn over the book. If Lockheed Martin, a private industry, to do business with them, could come in and request all my books. And financial, who gets paid what, and then the Navy came in and was like, give us all your books and all your financials, then, like, the CCC can come in and be like, look, you want this money, you want out, we need to look at your books to make sure this isn't going to be some, like, slush fund.
Yeah.
And then you start taking down the stores, you start taking down the grows, and then you start, hell, like, even stabilize the retail price like liquor did. And you could say, like, we're only going to do a 6-month trial period and see what happens. Mm-hmm. And I know there's going to be a couple of players that are like, this is BS, especially the border stores, right? Like, they're going to be super upset.
Yeah.
But you have, like, 10 border stores and 390 internal stores hurting.
Right.
And so, Michael Hunnewell for CCC. Yeah.
Like, you heard it. Exactly.
No, it's just, like, it's hard. Like, that's what I would... the question is, none of that's ever going to get through legislation.
Right.
Like, explain to me how anyone's going to, like, they're gonna
no changes that are coming.
and the people that type of thing like ultimately hurts, the people that want the other type of legislation to go through.
Yeah, exactly. All right, as we wrap,
Sorry, we never got to the private label stuff.
no, but like I think that's one of the reasons why I invited you on, because I know you have hot takes.
Scourging. This is gonna be like the end of my career.
Expect your inspector to give you
I know.
email when you get out of the pod. But all for seriousness, like, again, a lot of the stuff we acclaimed about inversion, stuff like that, I personally do not have any proof of any of that stuff. And
Legally, I do not know anyone or anything doing the things I talked about on this podcast today.
But but I guess any last thoughts you want to leave the audience with, such as about stores, future things?
Yeah, like who would you say is kind of like, so there's the customer, right? And I think the customer at the end of the day really doesn't care about, I would say if you're the customer, you never want monopolization in anything.
Yeah.
And it just leads to bad stuff, but and competition's good. So striking a balance is important. And I would just leave it at that. And again, like that's not a plus or minus for the cap. It's just understanding that at some point we're going to have to tell ourselves, like, when are these guys getting too big? And like, when does the customer start getting hurt from that? And I'm not saying it's now. For the people in the trade industry, like the other, maybe some of the people watching this, 2 hours, but like hopefully this gets clipped a lot, is I would say, just remember from my personal experience, and again, people are going to be like, this is some guy with 2 stores, so go kick rocks. But from Topco and like the defense days and manufacturing it's going to come down to pennies in the long run. All this comes down, and it sounds crazy. There's no moat that you're going to build that making a product comes down to pennies. And just remember, everything is relative, so, you being there with 100 stores, that's probably not going to be enough in the long run. There's going to be some GPOs exist in every single, look at the hardware stores when Home Depot and like Ace basically saved every small mom and pop because of that model. And they even let them keep the names, which is an interesting like caveat, right? Like you look at an Ace hardware, it always has the original name. But just remember that, like, and it's really the investors out there. Like if you're being promised that we're going to be the cheapest and we're going to just like outscale everyone and there's no way anyone can come after us for our cost, I have never seen that pan out in 20 years. And ultimately that's why everyone says when you start a business in retail, you want to be a premium product, because you don't want to be at the mercy of cost. And then, and this whole idea of like, oh, like this guy's coming to us, if we just get these like 3 more stores, like all our problems go away. I would just argue historically, it's cannabis, anything can happen. I would just argue historically speaking, that has never panned out. So
appreciate your words.
That was a long, I thought I was going to come in here and say we're going to do like 20 minutes.
It's felt like 20 minutes. I could have gone for a lot longer.
Do like people go long? Like, I guess there's a lot of stuff like as opposed to like just telling the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, some people come on, they say the story, and some people come on and they have interesting facets to the story of like how they got into it and why they're here.
I think I'm gonna honestly, Jason, I think people are gonna rip me apart when they see this.
Oh, it's great.
Oh,
I think it's fantastic.
I'm getting like
anxiety about it. Yeah, you're fine. And because I think honestly though, like I think some of the operators who listen to our podcast, because it's predominantly like we don't get we don't get a ton of views, but we get the right people.
You get the right views. You're a trade group.
Yeah, exactly. So from my perspective, I think a lot of people need to hear some of those words though. And that's another reason why.
But I know some of the big guys are like, that's just a theory and he's some like crackpot kid. But like, to be fair, like what's hilarious is the GPO thing was like 3 years ago, people are like, this is insane, it'll never work. Now there's like, everyone's trying to like
pseudo
do it.
Yeah.
And like basically it won't work for a lot of reasons, but It's interesting.
But I still feel like cannabis isn't this unique butterfly.
It's not.
highly
I guess
regulated.
that should have been like my final take is like everyone wants, I'm like tired of people being like, you don't understand this is cannabis. And it's not. This is a retail, it's manufacturing, which sucks. If you ever had to manufacture something, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. And it's retail.
Yeah.
And like, that's it. Like, yeah. So like,
existed for so long.
it's existed so long and everyone doesn't want it to be that, but like, that's it.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, it's like when the bud tender comes in,
Yeah.
green, they're like, yeah, I'm selling weed. This is amazing. And then it's like, oh, I'm just working at the Gap store.
Yeah. Well, like, and there's like so many things from like we may be done, but like
We are done, but this
is off our.
you could also record it too.
You want to hear a crazy story? Like
Yeah, I do.
when I was at Topco, Leslie Gouviera, she was the she came over to Topco. She worked at Shop, and she was the VP of Stop and Shop forever. She tried to give one of the grocers it was like a $10 tchotchke type thing, and the guy's like, I can't take that. I remember asking her why. And she was like, oh, well, back in the day, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, instead of offering discounts to move product, would just go to the assistant store manager at like Stop and Shop and be like, hey, they used to have like an industry day. You go down to like Florida, they fly everyone down to Florida, not corporate, the guys working the boots on the ground, the assistant managers and stuff.
Yeah.
And be like, guess what? You won a free trip to the Bahamas. Guess what? And like everyone won. And they're like, keep selling Coke and Pepsi. Because what was cheaper? Give 10 cents off a unit and sacrifice 200 grand in sales and wholesale sales, or pay off the guy in the store 20 grand and he'll be out there shouting at his staff to hawk your product every day.
Yeah.
What's crazy is when it came to cannabis, what's the app that like allows you to bribe the budtenders? Sparkplug.
Yeah.
That is crazy that they like only in cannabis does Sparkplug exist. Cause like I never allowed Sparkplug. I was like, we banned this in retail. Like it is like downright illegal to do this. And like, everyone's like, you don't understand. Like this is, and now like Sparkplug's basically changed the whole, like they've like Edge or iRate or whatever. Like they're basically getting away from that because all the store owners are starting to realize that like you dictate what moves. Like you are in control of your own, like it's visibility, recommendations, and then like, you know, like what, and that's really it. And it's so like, that is, someone can either pay you to do that, but bribing your fucking budtenders. And like the crazy things are like, oh, I'm holier than them. You're taking a bribe.
Yeah.
Like you're taking a bribe from a vendor, which is fine.
We build it into financial models.
Yeah, like
we
build it into the model. Like that's fine. Like, but it was crazy when everyone came to me and they're like, that you don't know what you're like, that's stupid. I'm like, this is madness.
Yeah.
Or like sliding margins, you know, like based on costs. They're like, you don't know what you're talking about. Aggregated buying, you don't know what you're talking about. And it was the same thing. It's like, yeah, I had guys telling me like this was their first job and they were buying, they're like, I've been in cannabis for 3 years. They had no other work. They've never worked in another business.
And now they're a buyer.
And they're just like looking at me like, you're just some idiot who, I'm like, I worked 20 years across multiple, and like, I'm not MBA, like, and I'm not saying like I'm some guru. All I'm saying is like, like, do you really think like it wouldn't kill you? Like when I tell you something and I give examples, like, I don't think your response to be like, hey, shut up, nerd.
Right.
Like this is cannabis.
Right.
Like,
Which is why I think, again, the reason why I brought you on is because you have all these past experiences, which are, I believe, relevant to the today's scenarios.
and like, look at the liquor guys. Like they're all killing it. All the guys that own liquor stores before cannabis or convenience stores are crushing.
Yeah.
So like, there's something to be said from outside experience.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Yeah.